Good morning. It is the 8th of December, 2023. I'm Bear from the internet, and we're going to do the brief. Okay, Bear. Awesome coffee. What does your shirt say? Hashtag not comply. Solid advice. Bear Independent brief, 8 December 23. 5x5 in the chat. Appreciate y'all. On Monday, just one day before the United States vote on a $61 billion aid package to Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine canceled the online address that he had planned to the House of Representatives. A last-minute issue was cited, but the implications are unclear. On Tuesday, a classified briefing for lawmakers, quote, broke down spectacularly, according to the BBC, as at least 12 Republicans walked out and senators, quote, shouted at each other over border security, end quote. Not so happy about we'll send another $61 billion of your taxpayer money to Ukraine, but also we're being invaded on our southern border. Casey Lambert, negative, Wilco, Raj. The director of the Office of Management and Budget, Shalanda Young, wrote a letter to House and Senate leaders warning that the United States would run out of funding for Ukraine by the end of 2023, saying that, quote, if Ukraine's economy collapses, they will not be able to keep fighting, full stop, and that we are out of money and nearly out of time, end quote. Young also pointed out that the $111 billion that had been allocated for Ukraine has already been used up by the middle of last month. Now, that number varies depending on who you ask, whose reporting you read, etc., etc. The last time I did not even a deep dive, a moderate dive into that, it was somewhere around $196 billion. Because there's money that is being sent directly to Ukraine, and then there's also money that's being provided to defense contractors here in the United States to replace the inventory of stuff that was sent to Ukraine. And so there's direct aid to Ukraine, and then there's indirect aid to Ukraine, and that number is somewhere around $200 billion. 200 billion with a B, billion dollars. Now, for those who are playing along in the home game, here's a disgusting fact that you may not know. The last time it was estimated, somewhere around 2016, human trafficking is a $150 billion per year industry. Just for context, $150 billion a year. Two of the prime suspects in this, by the way, this is a known fact, are Ukraine and Russia. Now, the U.S. is the number one consumer of this type of content, this abomination. So fix your house. But Ukraine and Russia are amongst the top 5 in providers of said abomination. So, yeah, before everybody, Putin's a hardcore Christian and the Russians are good. Yeah, America's a Christian nation and Americans are good. Yeah, how big of a circle does one draw around yourself? So just for context, the trafficking of people, $150 billion a year industry. Back to Ukraine. More importantly, it's not known if there is a real path out of this conflict. Just this last Monday, House Speaker Mike Johnson said in a statement that Biden, quote, failed to substantively address any of my conference's legitimate concerns about the lack of a clear strategy in Ukraine, a path to resolving the conflict, or a plan to adequately ensuring accountability for aid provided by the American taxpayer, end quote. Yeah, well, Burisma Holdings, 10% for the big guy. The GAO, Government Accountability Office, estimates that approximately 70% of all the money that's been sent to Ukraine never actually made it to the front. That's about $77 billion. And then interestingly, there's a bunch of tertiary connections between Ukraine and the Democratic Party. So your taxpayer money is in part being laundered through Ukraine back to the DNC. This is like a prime example of what's called the Hegelian dialectic. Andriy Yermak, the head of Ukraine's presidential office, said that if the U.S. aid dried up, there would be a very high possibility that the war would be lost and that the Russian-occupied areas would become, quote, impossible to continue to liberate. What makes any of us believe that the goal was for Ukraine to win this war in the first place? Is that because that's what we were told? Because that's how war's supposed to go? Like, destroy your enemy completely? This is probably just another money laundering scheme, right? Remember, there's this lady. She's a terrible human being. Her name is Hillary. Remember her? And during not the most recent presidential election asterisk, but the one before that, there was this guy from New York, Donald something, and he was running for president, and this other lady from Arkansas, I think, yeah. She was also running for president, and there was all this talk about Russian collusion. Remember that? And then it turns out that apparently whatever you accuse your opponent of being guilty of is actually what you're guilty of. And then this thing called the Steele dossier came out, and the FBI jumped all over that, and they used that to attempt to impede this guy from New York's ability to win the presidential election. And it turned out that the Steele dossier was completely made up by this lady from Arkansas. Remember all of that? And it turns out that this lady from Arkansas, her particular political party, represented by an ass accurate, they are actually in bed with the Russians. And then same political party also has a known pedophile currently installed as president of the United States of America. And that guy's kid, who's a crack addict, literally happens to be on the board of a company in Ukraine where certain people from the United States State Department have been embedded in said country for the last decade or so. And then coincidentally, we just happen to have a war in Eastern Europe, in Ukraine, aka Gomer from Ezekiel 37 and 38, that somehow was laundering money back to these people's political party as they prepare to fight this guy from New York again. Coincidence, I'm sure. I'm sure it's all just coincidence. M in the chat. It's pronounced Arkansas. I agree. My supposition, and I have nothing to base this on other than my own experiences, is that at some point there was a huge fight in Kansas and a bunch of people left Kansas. And then they got to this piece of land and they said, this is our Kansas now. And it somehow became Arkansas. So I don't know. Back to the brief. So if Ukraine doesn't get any more of your money, it would be impossible to continue to liberate the Russian-occupied areas of Ukraine, the Luhansk and Donetsk and Donbas regions, Crimea, etc. Then on Thursday, everything has come under question again. That would be yesterday. Senate Republicans have blocked a supplemental funding bill containing aid for Ukraine, Taiwan, and Israel. In fact, every single Republican senator voted against the bill's advancement. In regard to Israel, Senator Bernie Sanders wrote, quote, now, he's not a Republican, but make no mistake, the Republicans and the Democrats are just two separate wings of the same shitty bird. Because there's this dude that was God made flesh, Mashiach, you might have heard of him. He's in this blue book that I like to read, this one right here. And he said, you shall know them by their fruits, aka nobody cares about what comes out of your mouth if it isn't copacetic with the works that you do with your hands. You will know them by their fruits. And the fruits of both of these political parties, not so bueno. I know poquito español. Es no bueno. Es no bueno. The Texas, es mucho Ohio, right? Wars, muchos wars. Tyranny, muchas tyranny. The Patriot Act, anybody? Anybody? Remember that? Yeah. when 19 Saudi Arabians attacked the United States of America and then we magically went to war in Iraq and Afghanistan? Remember that? Yeah, we need the Patriot Act. Now you have Comey. We need Section 702 of the FISA reinstated or continued so that we can continue to not spy on Americans, even though we just happened to spy on 278,000 Americans last year accidentally. I wonder if it's the same 278,000 Americans that were geofenced on January 6th. Right, because that would just be a coincidence, I'm sure. So anyway, Bernie Sanders, who's definitely not a Republican, but that's nothing to brag about, said, quote, "No, I don't think we should be appropriating $10.1 billion for the right-wing extremist Netanyahu government to continue its current military strategy. What the Netanyahu government is doing is immoral. It is a violation of international law, and the United States should not be complicit in those actions." End quote. With Congress's winter break fast approaching, a lot is hanging in the balance. Now, a couple of thoughts on this. The first is Congress gets a winter break. For what? All the good work that they've been doing? We're going to reward these scumbags with more PTO, paid time off? Dude, negative. I don't really want to. I want to jump in that rabbit hole, but I don't think it's going to be profitable for us this morning if I do. Why? Do your job. Now, we all know what their job is supposed to be. What type of government, sir, have you given us? A republic, if you can keep it. A representative republic, right? But they don't. That it doesn't work that way anymore. Because again, the actuality, know them by their works. What do? We don't have a representative republic. We have an oligarchy with a political class that's bought and paid for that rules this country in their best interest, not in your best interest, which is why we have a war in Ukraine right now. And arguably why there's a war in Israel, because I think, my opinion, if I was Russia and I needed to divert attention away from Ukraine, a really good way to do that would be to start another proxy war, say, for example, in the Middle East by funding Iran, which then funds Hezbollah, Hamas, the Yemeni Houthi rebels, et cetera, and not just funds them, trains them with the IRGC, Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, and the Quds forces, and foment some warfare in Israel. So now that the U.S. is forced to do the thing that they're arguing about right now, do we give money to Israel or do we give money to Ukraine? What do we do so that Russia can continue with their special military operation in Ukraine? Yeah, that's why we have a war in Ukraine right now, and potentially Israel, because the people who are supposed to represent your best interests, who get paid $160,000 a year, somehow go to DC with no money at all. And when they end up leaving DC, have net worths in the range of tens to hundreds of millions of doll hairs. Coincidentally, I'm sure. We just talked about, what's his face, Menendez, on Wednesday, that had 13 gold bars that he got from Egypt and $566,000 in cash. Each gold bar has an approximate street value of $800,000. So dude's rolling around with over $10 million worth of gold in his pockets. Coincidentally, just coincidental. It has nothing to do with the fact that he was the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee at all, right? But these people are supposed to represent our best interests. They don't care. They don't care about you. I'll reiterate, they don't care about you. They don't care about me, which is why you should do your absolute damnedest, your absolute best to take as much personal responsibility and take authority back from the government and govern yourself, because that's the way that you were created to be. There is only one governing authority in your life, whether you acknowledge him or not, and his name is Yahuwah your Elohim, the Lord your God. And he became flesh and dwelt amongst men, John chapter 1, as Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ. This is your governing authority. Everybody else can kiss your ass and should kiss your ass. And in fact, if you read the Bible, there's this chapter in there. It's called 1 Samuel. And Samuel, or Shemuel, was a prophet, a man of Elohim, a man of God. And the Israelites were like, yo, dude, make us a king. all these other nations have kings, and we want to be like them. We want to have a king. And Samuel was like, that's not how this is supposed to work. There's not supposed to be anybody in between you and the creator. And they're like, we know, but everybody else has a king. We want a king too. And he's like, I could, you know what? Hold on. Let me talk to God. And so he prays and he talks to Yah. And Yah says, you can give them a king, but make sure you explain to them the downsides. He's like, all right. So he goes back to the Israelites, New Living Bear translation here, paraphrasing. It says, yo, listen up. I can make you a king. But if I do, you have to understand, he's going to take your best men, your strongest men. He's going to take them to war. He's going to take your daughters and make them work inside of his household. He's going to take your oil and your wine and your grain. He's going to take a portion of everything that you produce. Okay? He's going to gather horses for himself. What are horses for? Transportation, mobility on the battlefield. And the Israelites are like, cool, sounds good. Yeah, we want one of those. Give us one of those. He's like, all right. And then he ordained Shaul, King Saul of the tribe of Benjamin, who then, Philistines show up. Goliath is there. David, seventh son of Yishai of Jesse, shows up. And he's like, oh, nice giant, bro. How about a rock to the forehead? Rock to the forehead happens. He cuts off Goliath's head with his own sword. And then David becomes popular. They write songs about David. Saul killed his thousands and David killed his 10,000s. Wait a minute. A man of God killed tens of thousands of men? Yeah, read the Bible. Don't be a pussy. And yeah. And then Saul wants to kill David and blah, blah, blah. And then you move on from there. So that's right, Militant Roots. So anyway, we're not supposed to have kings. You're supposed to be subordinate to the creator only. So in your life, to the best of your ability, you should shirk this oppressive tyranny of government to the best of your ability. Because they don't have your best interest at heart anyway. They will take your sons to war. They will take your daughters and put them to work in their own household. They will take a percentage of everything that you produce for them. They will gather horses for warfare. And then you'll be bitching about, well, why is the king doing this? Because that's what kings do. Okay? That's what kings do. So be the king of your own life, because that's what you were fearfully and wonderfully made to be. Exodus 19, verse 6. You'll be unto me a nation of kings and priests, a holy nation, set apart nation. That's what you're designed to be, a nation of kings and priests, subordinate only to the creator, not to some pedophile asshole in Washington, D.C. Moving right along. That's the written brief for today. If you're one of those 40% of people that watches the show but isn't subscribed, you know what to do. Subscribe, ring the little bell icon. Give us a thumbs up. That helps us fight the YouTube algorithmic robots. If you're not new here, you know what to do. Please share the show with somebody you love. We're being throttled significantly by YouTube. So, one way to get around that is to eschew the algorithm, and you guys just share this show with people that you think need to see it, right? Tim Hansen just said, only 32% of you watching have liked this live. Smash that thumbs up button. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate you. Somebody gave us $50 in the super chat. This mouse is uncooperative. I just put new batteries in it. Vern Yanger, love listening to your scripture readings. I appreciate all that you do. Grandma sure loved listening to you back in the day. Vern, I appreciate you. And I'm sorry if Grandma heard me say the P word on the brief. Thank you very much. Now, also, the show is brought to you by the creator of the universe, if you haven't figured that out by now, because he's the one that allowed me to wake up this morning and put breath in my lungs and words in my mouth. So praise Yah. And a lot of you are like, what's a Yah? Who's Yah? What the world calls God, G-O-D, I call Yah. And that comes from King David in the book of Psalms. He refers to God as Yah because God's name is Yod, He, Vav, He. And let's see, in pictographic Paleo-Hebrew, what that looks like is this. That's what that looks like. Yod, outstretched arm, He, man, Vav, upstretched arm, man. He, Yod, He, Vav, He, Yahuwah, Yahuwah, or Yahava, or Yahweh. Pick your pronunciation. And the Tetragrammaton is what this is called. Okay? And so, these are the two prime directives from Messiah. Love your neighbor as yourself. Outstretched arm to your neighbor. Love God with everything that you've got. Upstretched arm to him. Yod He, Vav He. So, shout out to Yah, God, the creator, Elohim, Adonai, El Shaddai, Hashem. Pick your poison. Don't matter. Appreciate you very much, Father. And then, of course, the people on Patreon who support the show. Link in the description. This morning on Patreon, I posted part 2 of Stop the Bleed. Well worth your $10 a month. I promise you that. And Refuge Medical, for whom I am the chief shill because I'm also the founder and CEO. So if you need to not die, refugemedical.com, promo code BearNation for free shipping on everything in the store. Go check that out. Now, let's talk about President Biden's student loan forgiveness. Why this mouse doesn't work. Why? Maybe let's power cycle the mouse. Nope. Okay. Biden administration to forgive $4.8 billion in student loan debt for 80,000 borrowers. This coming from CNBC. Because we have all the monies, so who cares? It's like, whose line is it anyway? The rules are made up and the points don't matter. The Biden administration announced on Wednesday that it would forgive an additional $4.8 billion in student loan debt for 80,000 borrowers. The relief is a result of the U.S. Department of Education's fixes to its income-driven repayment plans and public service loan forgiveness program. That's a mouthful. Quote, before President Biden took office, it was virtually impossible for eligible borrowers to access the student debt relief they rightly earned, U.S. Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona said in a statement. They rightly earned. Forgive me, but you signed your name on a document that said that you would be responsible for this debt. Again, sorry, what does the Bible say? You may know, you may not know, I am actually an ordained pastor. I'm trying to act more like that, but it's a process. I'm working on it. And so I like to go to what the Bible says. And the Bible says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. That's an Old Testament thing, but then it also comes out of the mouth of Messiah in the New Testament in the 4 Gospels, the 3 Synoptic Gospels, the 4 canonical Gospels. Imagine that. Messiah said Old Testament stuff. I know, what a coinkydink. But yeah, do not swear by heavens or earth or by the altar or the temple, but let your yes be yes and your no be no. So if you swore, you signed your name on the dotted line, that's your debt, not my debt. Now, many people say, okay, Bear, but what about the Bible? What about the Jubilee, the year of release, every 50 years? I'm all for that. But if we're going to do that, you're not allowed to have, per the Bible, unequal weights and measures. That's an abomination to Yahweh, your Elohim. And an abomination, Deuteronomy 32, is something that provokes the Father against you. Sin is sin. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of Yah. Okay, what's sin? 1 John 3, verse 4. Sin is lawlessness. What's the law? The Torah. That really revolutionizes what the Bible means once you figure out that in the New Testament, in 1 John chapter 3, verse 4, sin is defined. It's not just missing the mark, brother. No, it's defined. The mark is the Torah. Do the instruction. So sin is breaking Torah. Abominations, Deuteronomy 32, from the mouth of Moses, your abominations have provoked the Father against you. So when you do abominations, you piss God off so much, he comes to war against you. And one of those abominations is unequal weights and measures, which is why when you have a Jubilee year, everybody's debt is forgiven. Not just you, not just your neighbor, not just this person over here. Everybody's debt is forgiven. So if we're going to have a Jubilee year, let's have a Jubilee year. Otherwise, it's unequal weights and measures, which is an abomination. So let your yes be yes and your no be no. Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona said that these people have rightfully earned to have their debt released. More than $2 billion of the aid will go to nearly 46,000 borrowers enrolled in income-driven repayment plans. Those plans are supposed to lead to debt forgiveness after a set period, but this often didn't happen. because loan servicers failed to keep track of borrowers' payments. Oh, okay. Trust the government. They'll handle it. Oh, you made all those payments? Oops, we forgot. In addition, 34,400 borrowers who have worked in public service for a decade or more will receive $2.6 billion in loan cancellations, the U.S. Department of Education has said. The Biden administration has now canceled nearly $132 billion in student debt for more than 3.6 million Americans. The actions are likely to help President Joe Biden as he runs for re-election, said higher education expert Mark Kantrowitz. Biden has forgiven more student loan debt than any previous president, Kantrowitz said. It distinguishes him from other candidates. And then former governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie, had some words to say about this, trying to stay relevant. I don't care. Blah, 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 blah. So Biden has wiped out $132 billion in student loan debt. On the one hand, you could go, how compassionate. This is political gamesmanship. This is what this is. At your expense. Because when the president pays that $132 billion, he does that with money that came out of your paycheck. And this is, in a way, a redistribution of wealth. Because if you are in a job that didn't require you to take student loan debt, or if you're in a job that did, but you paid your debt off, now you're being taxed for myriad reasons. And some of that money is being used by the executive branch, the president, to just wipe out $132 billion in debt of other people's student loan that they signed on the line, but they didn't pay their fair share. It's redistribution of wealth unequally, which is an abomination to the creator. Yeah. So, not a fan. And it's political gamesmanship. Because is Biden really going to run for president again? Really? Like, really? Surely they can't be that stupid. Maybe they are, but surely. Good morning, Badger. Let's see. Speaking of pedophiles, we'll talk about Hunter Biden. Also, speaking of pedophiles, refuge.com. If you want to raise money for Caleb House, which is our juvenile human trafficking survivor restoration facility, which is a bunch of $50 awards for the place where we put kiddos back together again after we rescue them from traffickers. You can visit refugeruckus, RUCKUS.com. All of the information is there. We're going to be rucking through downtown Fort Smith, Arkansas with rucksacks on our backs, throwing middle fingers to pedophiles. It's the only national level event that I'm aware of in the history of mankind, specifically to raise awareness for anti-human trafficking. And if you want to show up with your rucksack and your cool guy boots and go on a 5K with us, as well as participate with all the speakers and presenters and the vendors and the live music and the Bible study and all that stuff, refugeruckus.com. Got it? Got it, Bear? All right, cool. Why is this hat weird? It's a little better. I look like a Pleiadian. Makes my head look really big. Probably to fit all those brain cells in there. Hunter Biden's tax fraud from RT.com. Hunter Biden charged with $1.4 million in tax evasion. The U.S. president's son faces 9 tax-related counts, which could potentially land him in jail for 17 years. Please, let justice be done. The U.S. Department of Justice has filed 9 new charges against Hunter Biden, including failure to file and pay taxes, tax evasion, and filing a false return. The authorities claim that the president's son has been using the money to lead an extravagant lifestyle. In September, the 53-year-old became the first child of a serving U.S. head of state to have criminal charges brought against him. That case revolves around allegations that Biden lied about his drug use when purchasing a firearm. He also previously faced misdemeanor tax-related charges. The same firearm whose prints were wiped off of and then thrown into a dumpster by an accomplice, aka his girlfriend, who may or may not have been under the age of 18 years old. Which in a certain sense, I'm like, cool, make case law out of that, please, because that's going to help all the rest of us who are just good Second Amendment supporting Americans. So please, please. Shall we continue? On Thursday, the Department of Justice and U.S. Attorney David Weiss, who is a special counsel leading a long-running investigation into the president's son, released a statement saying a federal grand jury in the Central District of California had returned the indictment charging Hunter Biden with 3 felony tax offenses and 6 misdemeanor tax offenses. According to the court document, the president's son engaged in a 4-year scheme to not pay at least $1.4 million in self-assessed federal taxes he owed for tax years 2016 through 2019, spending millions of dollars on an extravagant lifestyle rather than paying his tax bills. You mean to tell me that there's some kind of corruption in the family that's air quote running the United States of America right now? That lifestyle supposedly included drugs, escorts, and girlfriends, luxury hotels, rental properties, exotic cars, clothing, and other items of a personal nature, including over $70,000 on drug rehabilitation. The press release pointed out that Hunter Biden had earned handsomely while serving on the boards of Ukrainian industrial conglomerate Burisma, as well as the Chinese company CEFC China Energy Limited Co. You mean to tell me, I don't know if I buy this, that Hunter Biden, serving as a go-between, a mediator between the President of the United States and China and Ukraine, somehow committed tax fraud during a period of time while the DNC is also laundering taxpayer money in Ukraine, and while there's also a whole bunch of weird stuff happening with China, like totally not a spy balloon, and 400,000 Chinese military-age males coming across the southern border. That would never happen. I mean, not in the hallowed halls of Washington D.C., where all of our our representatives live and do work on our behalf. That would never happen, right? How interesting. Let's see. Biden raked in more than $7 million in total gross income, meaning that he had access to funds to pay some or all of these taxes. The document revealed that the president's son could face a maximum of 17 years behind bars if found guilty on all counts. The White House has declined to comment on Thursday's indictment, while Hunter Biden's defense attorney, Abe Lowell, claimed that the charges against his client were politically motivated. The same client that somehow left a bag of cocaine in the Oval Office? That guy? No. 3,000 cameras around the White House, and somehow we don't have video footage of who it was that accidentally left cocaine in a locker outside of the Oval Office. But they're trustworthy. Vote for me. In the same window that he visited. That's right, Badger. That's right. Allegedly, says Wisconsin Farm Boy. Allegedly. Yeah, well, you know that the Secret Service had to put it through some rigorous testing to find out what kind of powder this was. Yeah, give it the old sugar booger smell test. I'm sure. Yep. Cameras didn't help Epstein either. Well, Epstein is an interesting case. Here we are. Conchita Sarnoff, trafficking, the Jeffrey Epstein case, and demonetized channel strike. What most people are unaware of is that while Epstein was being tried for sexual misconduct in the state of Florida, the federales stepped in and they negotiated an NPA, a non-prosecution agreement with Epstein on 98 of the 100 counts that he was being accused of. The other 2 counts were tried in the state of Florida, but as part of the federal non-prosecution agreement, none of the the plaintiffs, were allowed to testify, and only 2 sworn affidavits of the 2 of 100 were submitted as evidence and as part of the NPA as to how come nobody's ever seen the names on Epstein's little black book. Part of the non-prosecution agreement was that those names would never be released, even though those people from Arkansas were 100% tied in with that. And by the way, Leslie Wexner, who's a dude, not a chick, Leslie Wexner, who's the bazillionaire that owns Victoria's Secret, amongst many other enterprises, was Epstein's financial backer. Did you guys know that? Yeah, imagine that. Also, Epstein did a lot of work on Wall Street, and part of why it's alleged in this book, Trafficking by Conchita Sarnoff, part of why the NPA, the non-prosecution agreement, was put in place was because of the relationships that Epstein had with Wall Street, and very likely he being complicit in the 2008 financial crisis. Yeah. And I'm not saying this guy's not a piece of shit, but he's also dead. Probably didn't kill himself, most likely didn't kill himself, or faked his death and is in the U.S. Virgin Islands right now, which is also possible. And what he did was abominable for sure. You guys want to get pissed, like pissed. Where's that book? I don't know where that book is. You want to get just furious? Research SRA. Yeah, I said the quiet part out loud. Research SRA. Satanic ritual abuse. You know, there's a growing trend in human trafficking of the abuse of infants and toddlers. And the reason is they're nonverbal. They can't testify. And once they begin to become verbal, either they're no longer abused, praise Yah, or the pieces of shit that are producing content with these infants and toddlers, the last piece of content that they produce is a snuff film. So, I'm in no way defending Jeffrey Epstein. He's an abominable piece of shit. But he's the first inch of the top of the iceberg. There are horrendous things that are being done to children. Horrendous things that are being done to children, infants, and toddlers. It is the largest growing segment of CSAM, child sexual exploitation material, and trafficking. It's growing exponentially because they can't testify, because they can't speak. And there is 100% an element of it's, and see, this is the thing, these minor attracted persons, that's bullshit. It's not a sexual orientation. It's about causing harm. That's why the younger, the more innocent, the better to these pedophilic pieces of shit. Yes, Justin Winch, snuff is death. That's correct. So I'm not in any way defending Epstein, just so we're clear on that. But if Epstein pisses you off, do a little bit of research. Get about as pissed off as I am. I would actually appreciate that. I really would. I would love it if more people were as furious as I am about this. And if you are, calebhouse.org. Come check us out. Caleb with a K, calebhouse.org. If the spirit moves you, you can find us there. If it does not, I don't ever want to be working counter to the spirit. Vision preparedness, special place in hell for those people. To the rock pile. To the rock pile. This is why, one of the many reasons why I tell you You need to take personal responsibility and do not participate to the best of your ability in this broken, fragile system, and make your AO a non-permissive environment for sin. I saw so many of y'all on Monday saying 12 to 15 guys. I could never find 12 to. You better start finding 12 to 15 guys, or you're just going to continue to make excuses and farm out your responsibility to the lowest bidder, i.e. the government, which is complicit in these atrocities. Hundreds of daycares, schools for special needs children, and foster homes are known to have been, just this past year, within the last month, hundreds are known to have been explicitly developed as a pipeline for trafficking. The sole reason they exist is as a pipeline for trafficking. You need to be incredibly careful who you let your children around. And you need to be incredibly careful who you put your faith in, who you trust. Jason said you can find 12 to 15 guys, or you can face 12 to 15 guys, your choice. I'm telling you, you need to take personal responsibility to the best of your ability. Good morning, my love. How did you sleep? 2 thumbs up. Praise Yah. Good job. Yeah. CalebHouse.org. Caleb with a K. It's also December, which is when a lot of people engage in end of year giving. We're a 501c3. So if your company has like matching for donations or whatever, like we got all the letters that we need to have from the governing authorities. Are there some indicators to be aware of? Cast Iron Chancellor, I am going to do a pre-recorded piece of YouTube content specifically on how to identify child trafficking and things to be aware of. So be on the lookout for that. It's coming. Do you think a Surefire will be fine if I mount it directly beside the muzzle? Yeah, Badfish. I have 3 of them mounted directly next to the muzzle. If you can mount it a little bit further back, you'll be even better. Even an inch back, you'll be even better. Corey said they busted a daycare up here in Canada abusing nonverbal special needs children. Precisely. You know why? Because they can't testify. And because these people are the worst type of people on planet Earth. That's why we have a patch at Refuge Medical that says pedophiles aren't people, with a picture of a wood chipper on it. I will not afford those beings the same rights, the same grace that I would afford anybody else. Why? Because again, my foundation for truth is what it says in this book. And Messiah himself says, if you harm one of these little ones, it would be better that I tied a big rock to your neck and threw you in the ocean. It would be better. It would be better for you to have a millstone tied to your neck and pushed into the ocean than you harm one of these little ones. What would Jesus do? Throw pedophiles in the ocean. That's what he would do. So, speaking of human trafficking, also from RT, we touched on this Wednesday, but there's a new development here. Facebook and Instagram enabled child trafficking, according to a new lawsuit. Mark Zuckerberg's platforms are a breeding ground for predators, according to New Mexico's Attorney General. Facebook and Instagram displayed sexual content to minors and serve as, quote, a marketplace for predators in search of children, end quote, according to a lawsuit brought against the platform's parent company, Meta, by the state of New Mexico's Attorney General. Filed on Tuesday, the suit alleges that underage users of both platforms, who can sign up without age verification, are shown advertisements linking to adult pornography sites and directed to accounts posting, quote, images of sexual intercourse and sexualized images of minors, end quote, even when the child has expressed no interest in this content. Quote, the office's investigators found that certain child exploitative content is over 10 times more prevalent on Facebook and Instagram than it is on Pornhub and OnlyFans, end quote, Attorney General Raul Torres said in a statement. Investigators from Torres's office created a number of fictitious profiles to test Meta's enforcement policies. The team opened a pair of accounts posing as a 13-year-old girl and her mother, who they implied was, quote, interested in trafficking her daughter, end quote. Now, that may shock you, but between 70 and 80% of people who are trafficked know the person who trafficked them. And the definition of human trafficking is the exploitation of one person by another. And so, are there children in cages in the back of semis being trucked across the border? Yes. It's much more so, much more common in the United States that grandma has a meth problem and can't pay for it, so she pimps out her granddaughter. Or mom can't make the rent, and there's a handsy uncle that'll pay a couple $100 for a massage from the 8-year-old. Facts. That's part of why the system here in the United States is broken, because who has custody over that kid? The abuser does. And then you get CPS involved, and CPS wants to put them in a foster home. Well, the recidivism rate for somebody who's been trafficked is in the 80th percentile because that kid has already been broken, which means the next time that somebody's looking for somebody to traffic, that kid's already broken. They're a perfect target. So there's an 8 in 10 chance if a kid has already been trafficked, you put them into a CPS or a foster home, 8 in 10 chance they'll be trafficked again. That's why Caleb House is so important, is to break that cycle, to break that generational curse, to convict the shit out of the victimizers and to restore the victims, because each victimizer is statistically responsible for 82 victims, not 82 offenses, 82 victims. And this is a learned behavior. So I have to break that cycle with those 82 victims. Why is this exploding at an exponential rate? Because of the scope of this. Because one makes 82. One doesn't make one. One doesn't make two. One statistically makes 82. And these pieces of shit, when they are arrested, have not dozens of videos or pictures, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of images, of videos, millions. And each one of those pieces of content, air quote, is a kid. Think about that. Investigators from Torres's office created a number of fictitious profiles to test Meta's enforcement policies. The team opened a pair of accounts posing as a 13-year-old girl and her mother, who they implied was interested in trafficking her daughter. Both accounts hit Facebook's 5,000 friend limit within days, and the mother's account was bombarded with inappropriate expressions of love or interest in her daughter, none of which were flagged by Facebook. The daughter, named Issa by investigators, was added to a chat group in which members shared pornographic videos and naked photos of underage girls, which remained active after numerous reports to Facebook's moderators. Quote, Issa's messages and chats are filled with pictures and videos of genitalia, including exposed penises, which she received at least 3 to 4 times per week, the lawsuit noted, explaining that none of the men responsible for these messages have been banned by Facebook despite being reported. The daughter's profile and that of another fictitious teen girl were then shared by an anonymous account advertising underage girls who were selling sex, while another Instagram account purportedly belonging to a 13-year-old girl was followed by accounts whose profile suggested that they sold child pornography. While the lawsuit included some redacted images of the content seen by investigators, it stated that other images had to be admitted as they were too graphic and disturbing. The suit seeks $5,000 from Meta for each alleged violation of New Mexico's Unfair Practices Act and accuses the firm of breaching public nuisance laws by placing the health and safety of thousands of New Mexico's children at risk. Quote, child exploitation is a horrific crime and online predators are determined criminals, Meta said in a response to the suit. Quote, we use sophisticated technology, hire child safety experts, report content to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and share information and tools with other companies and law enforcement to help root out predators. The lawsuit was filed less than a week after Meta announced that it was strengthening its child safety features following a series of reports by the Wall Street Journal that revealed that Meta was failing to curtail the activity of pedophile networks on Facebook and Instagram. Now, as far as Meta reporting content to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, there are good women that work at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. However, they are underfunded and overwhelmed. One case in point, I reported an incident to them that I had firsthand knowledge of as part of an ongoing lawsuit, we'll just say legal action against some certain pieces of shit in a certain state. I reported it. I got a follow-up phone call a week after I filed the report that said they would look into it. The next phone call I got from them was 17 months later. 17 months later. I can be out of my house and in my truck away from my home in 17 minutes. I can be most places in the United States in 17 hours. I can be anywhere in the globe easily in 17 days. 17 months later, they followed up. Okay. 82 victims across 6 generations of exponential growth is 3.7 billion people. This has to stop now. Thank you, 12C. You see the problem? And it's going to take righteous men and women who will stand up and say no. No. And I can't save the whole country. I can't save the whole world. I am not Messiah. I don't even think I can save the whole state of Oklahoma. But I can make my county a non-permissive environment for sin. And I am. And on many an occasion, in the middle of the night, we've come to your county and handled your shit for you. And I'll continue to do that until there's no more breath in my lungs. But I also wish, frankly, that y'all would handle your own shit. I really do. Because I can't be everywhere. And the only way we are able to do what we do with Caleb House is by the blessing of the Creator and because of y'all. We are 100% supported by the Bear Nation, all privately funded. And for anybody who's trying to do some back of the napkin math, it costs between $20,000 and $50,000 to do an extraction. $20,000 to $50,000 to do real costs, do an extraction. That's what it takes. Boots on the ground, fuel, rental vehicles, safe houses, consumables, food, medical service, victim advocacy, law enforcement support, legal representation, court filings, aftercare, trauma docs. The extraction takes $20,000 to $50,000. Dustin Wiley. It took 9 years for a guy to get charged with molesting his sister. Got out in 6 months locally. Well, I guess we know who that guy is now. Unrelated, my wife showed me last night on Facebook Marketplace that there was 2-inch manila rope, 600-foot pallet of for only $2 a foot. It's a lot of rope. Just saying. $2. It's an interesting cost. Also completely unrelated. I'm a big fan of the Freedom Munitions 147 grain jacketed hollow point 9mm variety. Very very effective. I've used these on sheep with a headshot right here, and they go down that fast. Throws them right to the ground. So your AO needs to be a non-permissive environment for sin. It's 12 to 15 men, there's no way. You better find a way. And you better support the good men and women in your AO who are making a way. National Intel, bearindependent.com. Use the contact us link or email intel@bearindependent.com. Only 2 of y'all wrote in this past week. I want your national intel. What have you seen with your own eyes? What have you heard with your own ears? National intel, intel@bearindependent.com. Badger just dropped it in the chat. I like it when we have 12 to 20 national intel reports, not 2. So if you've thought about emailing us and you haven't, please do so. We want to know what's going on around the country and the world from y'all. Okay? Okay, Bear. National Intel. Had a chance to talk with a buddy who is an SES. I forget what that acronym means. Support something specialist with USMC acquisitions. He's kind of like the go-between between like private sector, political, and the military. Had a chance to talk with a buddy who is an SES with the USMC, United States Marine Corps Acquisitions. While it is possible the Marine Corps is doing a mass purchase due to companies closing down, or for a life cycle buy as it would be cheaper to store the goods themselves, he thinks there are other reasons. I've been talking about the Marine Corps doing mass purchases for the last 6-8 months because I'm seeing it, like on my end with Refuge Medical. He thinks there are other reasons. While the combatant commands are preparing for conflict, while other combatant commands are preparing for conflict. So let's just pause right there. While other combatant commands are preparing for conflict, whenever he visits Indo-PACOM, Indo-Pacific Command, the mood is they are already there. The intel and ops folks state they are already involved in low-intensity conflict throughout the region. For those that do not know, Indo-PACOM, Indo-Pacific Command, is historically the Marine Corps' main area of responsibility. And next. Of 5 December 23, 3 counties in upstate New York, Essex, Warren, and Washington counties will have a planned power outage for at least 8 hours on Saturday, December the 9th. This follows a sudden power outage last week when power was shut off due to an emergency situation while replacing a high voltage power pole. Word on the street is while they were drilling a hole for the new steel pole, the wooden pole broke. National Grid shut the power off to shore up the broken pole. Now a plan has been made to cut the power, finish drilling, and installing a new steel pole. Most affected towns will have warming centers available during the outage. And that's the national intel. So if you have something you'd like to add to the brief for next time, intel@bearindependent.com. Okay? Okay. Excellent. Now, refugemedical.com, for whom I am the CEO, founder, and chief shill. I don't even know what to say to y'all anymore about Refuge. You need to have a good first aid kit. You need to know how to use it. All we make are good first aid kits. We don't make Chinese shit. I can't guarantee you can save someone's life with our kit because there are a lot of external factors. But I can guarantee you will have the most likely chance of success with our kits versus anybody else's. I have gotten more feedback from more people, hundreds of people, than I can count. If you go look at just the bare fact, Refuge Medical, hundreds of 5-star reviews, hundreds. And by the way, if you currently purchase from Refuge Medical, or if you have in the past, I would really appreciate it if you could just go leave us a review on whatever product you bought from us. That helps us a lot. This one kit, the Bearfac, has hundreds of 5-star reviews. Everybody from grandmas to Navy SEALs and Army Green Berets have said this is the best first aid kit on earth. Okay? So what we do at Refuge, how we do product development, is we make it for the most extreme end user possible. U.S. Army Special Forces, Air Force Pararescue, U.S. Navy Special Warfare, SEALs. And if it will work for them, I guarantee you it will work for you. Whether you're a truck driver, a forklift operator, a lineman, a school teacher, a school bus driver, a homemaker, an off-road enthusiast. If this works for guys who jump out of helicopters into the ocean to rescue people, it will work in a minivan. And we've proven that over and over and over again. So this kit is not cheap intentionally, but it is excellent. It's made in America. It's guaranteed forever. If you break this kit, I will replace it at no cost to you. I had a guy who was in Afghanistan getting on a helicopter. That's all I can say about that. He lost his kit. He had his Bearfac. When he got off the helicopter, when he was getting back on the helicopter, he realized he didn't have it anymore. He's like, I don't know what happened. And suffice it to say, in between the two helicopter rides, a lot of shit happened. And so he wrote in and was like, hey, I don't know where it is. It's somewhere in those mountains over there. Roger that. Where can I send you another one? He's like, what? Where can I send you another one? I want you to have this. I can only assume the reason you don't have it anymore, something happened with the mounting and it's not there anymore. You need this. I'm going to send you another one. No cost to you. Like, that's real customer service. That's what we do. So this kit seems really basic, but it's not. It's incredibly intentional. There's a tourniquet on the outside because I need this first. March algorithm, massive bleeding, airway, respiratory, circulation, head injury, hypothermia, everything else. And if you don't know what that means, on this channel, on YouTube, I have a playlist called Trauma Medicine. Free 4-hour block of instruction. Go watch that. If you're on Patreon, watch the Stop the Bleed classes that I've been putting up. There's one last Friday, part 1, part 2 dropped this morning. Okay? I explained the March algorithm. So I need this first. Why are there shears out here? Because depending on the modality of injury, you might have to get trauma naked. I'm all for modesty, but I'd rather be embarrassed and alive than modest and dead. So expose the wound, okay? And then I rip this lid open, I grab this red handle, and I pull. And now I'm holding a purpose-built trauma IPAC in my hand that I can open with one hand. Because 4 people of the 93 who have had their lives saved with the Refuge medical kit, not including the 17 law enforcement officers in the state of Oklahoma, for a grand total of 110, 4 people have been missing one of their arms or their hands. And I don't mean in combat. One guy got his hand blown apart with fireworks on the 4th of July. Another guy got his arm stuck in a skid steer on a construction site. Okay? So I can open this with one hand. And in here, main panel, more massive bleeding stuff. Gloves. Gloves on scene safe. If it's wet and not yours, don't touch it. That protects you. Tourniquet. Massive bleeding in the extremities. Pressure bandage. Massive bleeding in the junctional areas. Your neck, your shoulders, your pelvic girdle, your ass. Tape. Real tape. Sharpie for marking time on a tourniquet, or a T on the forehead if you have to put a Mylar blanket on somebody. So this is my massive bleeding. Back here, I've got airway respiratory. This whole stack of stuff in this back pocket. Shears, nasal pharyngeal airway for maintaining a patent airway, 2 big 5x9 pads. Sam from Prep Medic just reviewed an adventure medical hiking kit, hiker's kit, and their bleeding control module was 1 5x9 gauze pad and a pair of gloves. Really? You gonna die, homie. That's nothing. Bob, our COO, cut his hand before a live stream last week. I gave him one of these. You got a cut on your hand? This is going to work great. You're bleeding to death? That's not what this is for. The reason I include 2 of these in the airway and respiratory module is because if you have punctures to the pleural space, the box in between right about here, this notch right here, and your belly button, neck and navel, 360 degrees around, that's your pleural space. If you get a puncture in there, a lot of times you have blood and viscous fluid that'll come out. And so I want one of these giant gauze pads. So I wipe that shit off so that I can stick a chest seal to that to close the hole. So chest seals and nasopharyngeal airway for airway and respiratory. We also include a burn tech dressing because burns are a common modality of injury in motor vehicle accidents. And statistically, the most dangerous thing you do as a human being on earth is drive. Yeah. But I'm not in a combat zone. I don't need one of those. You drive, right? The vast majority of lives that have been saved with Refuge kits have been motor vehicle accidents, MVAs. Not law enforcement officers, not soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, not cool guys overseas kicking in doors. Motor vehicle accidents of civilians. Okay? And then down here in the bottom pocket, you have your everything else. And so I have quick clot, real quick clot, not some knockoff Chinese or Ukrainian shit, real quick clot for wound packing. This is a hemostatic impregnated gauze for wound packing. Then I've got my trauma pack. And this is a heavy duty plastic bag. Everything inside this kit is weather resistant. You can dunk this in the water and do water crossings with it. You can put it on your boat. It's fine. Okay. I don't know about a submarine, but on your boat, it's fine. Compressed gauze for wound packing, mylar blanket for hypothermia, triangle bandage for everything, including making slings, roll gauze, Kerlix for dressing lacerations, 2x2, 4x4, and 5x9 gauze pads, flat duct tape right here because it rules the universe, iPad, eye shield, all for your minor injuries, your circulation, head injury, hypothermia, everything else. So, are there cheaper first aid kits? Sure. Are they actually first aid kits? No. Do you want your bleeding control module to be 1 5x9 gauze pad and a pair of gloves? The only people on planet Earth that would consider that a bleeding control module are people that don't know shit about bleeding control. And it amazes me how commoditized the first aid kit industry has become. It's a race to the bottom where everybody is trying to make cheaper and cheaper and cheaper kits. What is a life worth? If this cost $1,000, and it doesn't, and unless we go into hyperinflation, it never will. But if this cost $1,000, but I knew if I had this in my hand and I was in a car wreck and my wife was bleeding out, and I knew between what's in this kit and what's in between my 2 ears, I have everything I need to potentially save this life, that would be money well spent. And instead, the industry is focused on making the cheapest, most terrible Chinese bullshit they can to get the lowest price point with the highest profit margin so that they can run more Instagram and Facebook ads to get more customers into their funnel. And it's bullshit because they don't work. Those tourniquets break. Those pressure bandages don't work. The gauze is thin. You can't wound pack with it. It's all shit. The shears don't actually cut anything. And so there are other people in our industry, but we don't have any competitors. I don't know of another company that makes first aid kits that has over 100 saves in 4 years. I don't know of another company that makes first aid kits that makes every stitch, every thread, every grommet, every buckle made in the United States of America. I don't know of another company that unconditionally guarantees their products forever. I don't know of another company that will replace every component you use to save somebody's life at no cost to you. And I don't know of another company that does all of that while operating on a 5% profit margin. 5. Okay? Because the mission statement of Refuge Medical is to save lives while in service to the Father's kingdom and experiencing the abundance of His, not yours, His provision and blessing. Great kits for great people to save lives. That's what we do. If you're interested in that, you can find us at refugemedical.com. All right. And now with all that, shall we humble ourselves at the foot of the Creator? Yes, we shall. Oh, good morning, Father Yah. Father, all these kiddos that are going through hell right now, be with them. Father, give them strength. Father, give them peace. Father, pour out your vengeance on those who have earned it. Father, do righteousness and right ruling and destroy your enemies. Father, empower and protect those that would be your hands and feet here on this earthly plane. Give us the strength and the fortitude and the bravery to step out into the darkness and do what needs to be done. Father, bring restoration to these kiddos. Father, convict your people for a grassroots uprising of obedience and supplication and righteousness, for personal responsibility, for excellence in the eyes of you. Teach us to be kings and priests, and let us not fear anyone who can kill the body, but fear him, you, who can destroy the soul. Father, thank you for the fact that all of our problems aren't real problems. Thank you for allowing us to wake up with breath in our lungs. Thank you for fearfully and wonderfully creating us in your image, and for redeeming us by the blood of your Son, that we might come home again and be a part of your family and walk in your ways and be heir to your inheritance, to be useful for you, to hopefully hear at the end of an age, well done, good and faithful servant. Father, bring restoration. Convict those who need to be your hands and feet, whose sole purpose for existence is to step out into the darkness and to be the light. Because the world needs more men and women of you. And Father, help us remember that 2 of us will put 10,000 to flight, and that no weapon formed against us shall prosper, and that your will be done, and your word does not return to you void, and that you do not change, and that you are sovereign over all things. You're sovereign over our health and our well-being and our bank accounts and our blood and our lungs and our minds and our hearts and our hands and our feet. And that you are Elohim, and that there is none beside you, and that there is not a single problem in this world that is too big for you. Father, let us be in union with you and your will today, to the best of our ability. Father, give us strength and power and authority in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach to do your works. And pour your spirit on all flesh for wisdom and discernment by the Ruach HaKodesh. Bring peace that surpasses all understanding, healing, miraculous healing. Father, let your will be done, and make us strong enough to accept your will, whatever it might be. Father, anything that comes against us that is not of you, I rebuke it in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach and command it to destroy itself. Father, put a hedge around these people. I lift them up to you and ask humbly that you would bless them today, protect them today, and provide for them today. And ask these things in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen. Thank you for partnering with us to do what we do. We have the best audience on planet Earth, and that's not me blowing smoke up your rear end. I appreciate y'all very much, and I hope you have a blessed day of prep and an awesome Shabbat. And I will see you when I see y'all. Shalom.